start recording now as our pre-show. First thing, Terry McLaurin apparently injured his whatever he had. It got re-injured, and he
Yes.
is
Yep.
out for his quad. Yes, was re. I'm reading Rappaport's deal here, so
That
he's
sounded like
out.
it could be serious too,
Yeah,
like a
so
lingering thing.
and when he was out, it was other than Ertz, I know Moore and McCaffrey
Yep.
and Lane or whoever. But I don't remember who was doing what, but it wasn't very memorable. But then that was with Mariota. So now, if Daniels is back, we get a whole nother interaction with these, the next players to see how that gels. So, I don't know who people are going to jump on with that news, but it could be confusing because who does Jaden Daniels work better with? I'm hoping I got some Ertz shares, so I'm hoping that continues. But I remember I played McCaffrey
Oh,
and he got like
yeah.
zero or something.
Yeah.
It was sad. So anyway, I've got to, waivers are tonight. So I'm sitting here. I've got to recalculate what it is to do. I was looking at your article on the waiver wire article and looking and
The guy that intrigues me
yeah.
is that DK from Tennessee. He is there. It's weird because I had the same feeling as somebody else posted it on Twitter this morning,
Mhm.
and I laughed because I was like, that's exactly the way I've been feeling about this guy. He's emerging sort of how Sun God did in his rookie year,
Mhm.
where all of a sudden it was like a switch flipped, and he was suddenly pretty darn good. And I'm always hesitant to use.
Dennis, I'm sighing because now, because you said all that, I have to go and recalculate everything on my
Yeah.
waiver bids. Okay, well, your article didn't have him at the top hit. You had Butte at the top.
Correct. And I still think that's the way to go for
Well, he's not available.
no,
If
he's
he
if
is,
he's
not
not
much.
yeah,
Yeah.
if he's not available, then you got to go shopping for the next up. But I didn't think you'd have to spend too much on DK, which is why
Yeah,
I had him
I
down there. I was like,
think being at Tennessee is clouding the waters a little bit. People
yeah,
are a little skittish, and plus, I think they may be looking elsewhere more, and so it might be an opportunity. So yeah, I'm going to try to play it cheaply, but probably need to throw a little bit uh, extra since I'm not going.
Christian Watt, yeah, Christian Watson looked really good to me the other
Yeah,
night
he
too. So
did, and there's a few shares out there. I'm already got him as my number one above everybody we just mentioned. Just uh, gathering some dollar read shares, some the guy from Cleveland on IR for a dollar.
Dylan Sampson.
No, not the running back, wide receiver.
Oh, the wide receiver.
Uh,
Um,
the touchdown guy. The what's his name? Anyway, what's his name? He's on IR right now. We're
I'm trying to
thinking,
think of who you're talking about. From Cleveland?
yeah, he's on IR.
Oh, Cedric Tillman.
Yeah,
Tillman, yeah.
for a
Yeah.
dollar.
Yeah, that's
So
not a bad buy either.
what I'm doing is I'm going for if there's Butte, if there's Watson, this DK guy, and then if those flop out, I'm getting Reed and then Tillman is the like. So I try to, and this may be some strategy. I try to set up so okay, if I can't get what I can use this week, why not let it, scroll down for a dollar and grab, the next couple weeks. And, if I need them next week, I can always throw them back out, that kind of thing. So I've, been slowly accumulating, different shares of things. And, that's what I've been. So I'm setting up my waiver like that. And that may be a strategy for people, instead of trying to get a third or fourth, fifth, sixth tier person that's not injured and why get that? Why not,
Yeah.
get a Reed or somebody that might get you a spiky touchdown or something towards the playoffs. So that's just, I mean, I didn't say this was earth-shattering strategy, but it's just something that I do as well. A lot of moving pieces with the quarterbacks this week. Jaden Daniels, Lamar, trying to see if Bryce Young's coming back. Just Penix, is he coming back? I mean, there's a lot of things, and on my pick'ems and bets, it's a little murky on some of that stuff here. And I got some other secret, well, it's not secret more, but it won't, it's still secret because I'm the only one that did it. But based on our stumbling, and that was my fault on Dak versus Knicks, I reconfigured my efficiency, Dennis, and I've got some new figures that you won't have to bother me. You can just use these figures and you can see how it is. And I probably should have been doing this, and you'll see. So we got that as well. So anyway, I'm going to move on unless you've got some comments about McLaurin or anything else. I'm going to show you some data on the age
Yeah,
here.
with McLaurin, I here's the difference between the two quarterbacks, and
Hmm.
I let it pay off for me last week. I was so desperate in a couple of dynasty leagues
Hmm.
that I used McNichols, and
Yes. Yeah.
McNichols cashed,
Yes, he did.
because I figured that Mariota against a tough defense would be a check down king.
Hmm.
And that was the move. He got 11 points.
Yeah.
I mean, when you are looking at guys that like you could start that might be two or three,
Hmm.
getting 11 is a big deal. I mean,
I pulled that with Emmanuel Wilson last week.
yes,
I had
yes,
nothing. I mean, it was like Monange from Chicago. I
yes,
mean, there was
yep,
just nothing on the wire. Tajay Brooks. I mean, it was lean. Ray Davis. You were just praying for something, and I'm like, this guy's, he might get a little play. So I lucked into that
yep.
last week with Bob McGadden as well.
Yeah, one of my dynasty teams, I started Wilson in my last flex, and I
Yeah,
started McNichols as my super flex. This is
yeah.
a super flex league. Scored 22 points between the two of them. I
How does
won by
Jaden Daniels work with McNichols, though? In other words, does Bill prosper? With these quarterback changes, it's kind of
yeah,
hard to keep up with the balance.
yeah. I think so. There's two things going on here. I think if the rushing matchup is easier for Bill,
Hmm.
then he's going to some points, but he is not going to be on the field on third downs.
Mhm.
So if they have trouble moving the ball, which they did, they could not run the ball
Mhm.
effectively against the Chiefs early on. And
Imagine
so
that.
so they got into a passing, mentality.
Yeah.
But now you remove McLaurin, I don't think those touches go to necessarily to Debo under Mariota, but under Daniels, I think they do. I think
Yeah, and I'm
I,
hoping Ertz will get him about
yes,
five
yes.
targets and collect three for about 60 and maybe luck into, get me nine, but maybe get a touchdown too.
So
But
out of the 5 games with Daniels,
mhm.
Ertz double digits in 4 of those,
There
and
you
that's
go.
without that's
That's
and
what I'm envisioning this week.
yeah, and then he had a 0 in the other one. But the key is you know, those games came with and without McLaurin, and there was no difference.
Mhm.
So I
No, I think Ertz has his spot, and
he's
he
got
in that.
yeah,
Yeah, he's earning his five targets plus. And, it's just, as those tight ends, five targets can be enough to make your day, especially in a tight end premium.
yeah, that's exactly it. It's I just but you're right to not know. Like the one thing I think is that McNichols doesn't score. Like I would not trust McNichols this
No,
week,
he
but I
needs PPR volume catching up, garbage time towards the end,
yeah,
getting you another 10 points. I think he's safe for, say, eight, Dennis, though.
I
Because I
think
think
he's about
Washington's going to
yeah,
be in a negative script as well, aren't
yeah,
they?
that
Whoever they're playing, I think it's better than them. Unless Daniels can run and shake it up. If
yeah.
that happens, then, all this is off, and, I spend a lot of my time trying to guess the script. And I know
Yes.
everybody else does. I mean,
Yeah.
Vegas does. And Vegas just use the metrics and the algorithms and then flips the odds. And, you don't ever get the odds you really deserve on some of these parlays and things. They're rarer than you're getting odds for. I'm telling you, Vegas don't give you extra odds. You
Oh
know,
God, I saw the other day. Who was it that scored a touchdown? It was somebody really obscure,
yeah,
and they popped it up that that his payoff at
yeah,
DraftKings
yeah,
was like it was like plus 1,500,
yeah.
and I was like,
Yeah,
I was like, this guy hasn't scored a touchdown in his career,
yeah.
and
So
he's
how is that 1,500?
yeah.
Yeah.
If you're betting that, they're
Well,
they're
you're
just
losing.
they're printing money is what they're
Yeah,
doing.
that's what they're doing.
But yeah, but Washington faces Seattle, who has been like really, really good and then really, really average. Like they just it's you're not sure which team is showing up
Well, I got
half the
some
time.
interesting. I think you're gonna like what I'm doing. Hopefully I'll have time to do it every week. I'm adding
Ooh,
more figures for us to set the landscapes.
very
Anyway,
nice.
let me do this. Finish up my age. So what's been driving me nuts was the third year breakout concept, and I think we established I know running backs, I thought, and maybe even wide receivers. I was not seeing that. I was seeing the rookie to year two was when you were getting the dramatic increase in the fantasy points in the, seasonal. And so and we went back and forth. So I went tight end. And so Dennis right here, And you're seeing this, right? Yeah, I'm sharing.
Yep.
So
Yep.
experience. So this years of experience. So rookie, year two, year three, and and tight ends look interesting. 'Cause look at the pattern. That tight ends have a longer life, and we've seen that in I mean, they hit a plateau, and actually, the ones that survive out to 10 years or plus actually are doing better, that you would think. I mean, that's kind of the pattern here. I thought that was interesting too, because I remember all these old tight ends are still hanging around. And that is, different than running backs and wide receivers. And anyway, so this is that data. And so here's the pattern. And so what I did was this next figure right here, Dennis. This is the figure that is years of experience, percentage of top. So the concept was I would give the average points, and this is in, by the way, the top 25%. So I eliminated all the one or two game guys, the ones, I
Yeah.
just look at the end of the season, top 25% from 2000 to 2024. So we're talking serious data points here. And so I looked at the experience on these guys, and I did percentage of the top here. And you can see the tight ends, rookies, were 69% of the top. If you look at year 10 as the top, 69%, wide receivers 83, running backs 86. So and again, this is over the last 25 years. And I think, the tendency of running backs going a little further ahead as rookies is, this kind of shows that. And then it looks at year two, year three, and so forth. So then if you do a trend line, if you look at the tight ends, this is the trend line, and look, it really never declines. It kind of plateaus. I mean, you saw what I was seeing. And so that it's like tight ends kind of are building up. Here is running backs,
Oh,
year
wow.
six, and bam. And then wide receivers, notice they're peaking maybe a year later or two and staying a little bit and then declining. I've never seen this data looking over 24 years. To me, this in my head, if I'm a dynasty player, this is how this figure, I would copy this figure and print it out and just stare at it when I'm thinking about trades and stuff.
Yes.
you
Yes.
know and so again, folks, this is not the end of this is just putting the average together, and you figure out the individuals, right? Every individual's different, right? There's some extremes, people, Gore, Peterson, these guys last forever. They finally just, I think everybody gets tired of them and just, they just don't quit on them. And so there's that, Dennis. So I think that's really neat. And so the last figure, and I've actually I just remembered I did some secret data elsewhere. So I mapped the top difference from years rookie to year two, to year two to year three, and so forth. And so the first year with tight ends, 15% difference. So it increased by 15, wide receivers 7 and 9. And look, there, if you plot these year to year differences, here's what it shows you, and you can see that first rookie to year one is just stands by itself. There is no third year breakout.
No. No.
There is none. tight ends maybe a little bit,
Yes.
6%.
Yeah.
But wide receivers, the average is 3 and 1. Folks, 3%, 1%. That's really you're gonna spend too much time trying to guess on what's happening. Yeah, there are some obvious examples. They were
That's
hurt and all this other stuff, but on average, this population, it's the year 1 to 2 is where you spend your time at trying to beat the public, Dennis. There's where you can collect up to 7 to 15%. That sounds like fertile ground for really finding some bargains to me. And again, I probably should do this as a poster because I just don't. I think the title will be "Is there a third year breakout?" question mark, and I'll say no. It's a second year on
yeah.
average,
Yeah.
and the strategy. So their strategy should be figured out. What happened year 1, and what does that mean? And again, this may mean metrics in college are still something to consider. I don't have those metrics, and if I had interns, I'd have them investigating and put that data together to maybe help me predict that second year breakout. So I think I'm going to call it a second year breakout is the trend versus a third year. So I think I'm putting this to bed, Dennis, with 25 years of data.
Oh yeah.
Uh, so this is what I'm finding here. So I'm going to stop and let you comment and think about it.
Well, this data, the funny thing about data studies is when I see a data study that really backs up what I've been doing as strategy, because in the better than zero strategy, remember, once a player has 3 seasons in under their belt, we don't anticipate a big jump season 4. Okay. So I've said by season 3, you know who this guy is. And if he hasn't done it by now, he's not going to do it. And my favorite place to go shopping is for second year players that showed a little bit of a bump. And I look at the best 6 games that they had, and I look at that MVP over the best 6, best 8, best 10 game periods. If they showed anything for a minimum of 6 games, that made me think, especially if it's the end of the year. Like, look at Sun God. Sun God's a classic. So his rookie season, he was like a 64 for his MVP for the whole season. But if you look at his best 6 games at the end of the season, he was a 120.
I remember that season.
And yes, we both do, because we're both saying, what
The
did we
next
say?
year, we
We're
were like
buying.
all
We're
in.
buyers. He
Yeah.
was going 4th, 5th round.
Yeah, I remember. It was definitely a bargain.
And I had him projected as a top 10 guy. And I remember people were like, oh, and I'm just like, no, this guy is different. This guy he's something. And what I've looked for in those second year guys is an improving situation. Did they just change coaches? Did they add more talent? Did they finally get it together? If you see these things in addition to the data, you know you're there.
And again, there may be some secret college stuff, Dennis, that I don't know. I don't know.
Well, here's the wonderful thing is there's enough college data now, and like 10 years ago, the college data was really spotty. But in the past 10 years, the data from college has gotten as good as the data from the pros. So I'm wondering, would my MVP,
Yeah.
different thresholds, but the top guys, like the top 20% in MVP scores, are those guys better pros as a rookie?
Yeah, that
I
kind of
don't know.
thing. If you
That
could get me that data, we could definitely run it through.
Yeah, and
We need
well, I've got
interns.
yeah, and
Yeah.
Pro Football Reference has a ton of college data.
Mhm.
It's amazing. You can look up game logs
Nice.
from any player from college, and but no, I haven't done a bunch of research on it yet. What I usually look for with college, did the guy score a lot of touchdowns? Like, did he get in the end zone?
Right.
That's what I've liked. If I see a guy who gets in the end zone a lot, that was why I like Brian Thomas Jr.
Right.
Does he get in the end zone? Yeah. Oh,
Right.
okay. Then this is guy's a playmaker. And if you look at Amon-Ra St. Brown, he was a playmaker in college. Like
Right.
how he snuck where he did, who knows? But you know, the Lions were very smart,
Yeah.
and but he gave you hints of who he was. But looking at this data, I've always said by year 3, you'll know who they are. Maybe it's by year 2.
Yeah,
Like
well,
if I don't,
that's what it's showing to
yeah,
me
if I
is the
don't,
second year.
yeah, if I don't see in that second year some glimmer of hope,
Yeah.
I'm discarding that guy.
Yeah.
Like I'm not even going to think about him because I don't want to play the percentages for that small percent. And looking at that 1 or 3% rise, to me,
Yeah.
that's nothing because
That's nothing.
that's one touchdown over 17 games.
Yeah, that's nothing. I
That's
agree.
that's 4 catches over, four more catches. It's such a minimal amount of production
Hmm.
that it's noise at that point.
Yeah.
And but this drop off with running backs is very intriguing because the survivors usually survive, but what you're showing me in the top 25 percent data is even the best of the survivors are declining
Yeah,
after
and
five
what I thought
six.
was interesting was wide receivers are eclipsing and coming down, and at the same
Yeah,
time, tight ends are still building a little bit. The
yeah.
trend is showing that, but the running backs are peaking and dropping, and wide receivers are getting longer to hit their peak, and then they're dropping as well, about 10 years. But, look at 10 years and look at where the running backs are, tight ends, wide receivers, way different, trend
So,
wise.
are you ready for a player that's going to blow your mind? Because you mentioned him earlier. You mentioned Adrian Peterson staying great for so long.
Well, yeah.
But
Hmm.
here's the thing. If you look at the MVP index and you
Hmm.
use 100 as the
Hmm.
key number, because 100 is elite, right?
Right.
We've known that we get, on
Yes.
average, we get
90 to
13.
100,
Yeah,
you're
we get
starting to really get my attention.
we have 13 running backs every year that hit 100 on that's the average over the last 5 years. So Adrian Peterson played 12 full seasons.
Yes, he did.
His last 100 MVP
Yeah.
score, year 6.
Yeah. I can see
Year
that.
6. Look at your chart.
Yeah. That's where it's going down. The
Even
trend. Yeah.
even the greatest running back of recent vintage, because
Hmm.
Adrian Peterson started his career with 4 straight 100 plus MVP
Now he was a
seasons.
good pass catcher, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. He was an
Well,
incredibly good
let
pass
me
catcher.
let me finish the data here, Dennis. I actually went and looked in the top 25%, the experience, and looked at the percentage of
Ooh, I
fantasy
love it.
points from passing, and look what you see. The survivors, look at that, year 8, 11, and 12,
Yeah,
their fantasy points are the highest that anybody sees.
yeah,
And then they decline year 13. I mean, so you can see the decline, but it looks like year 8, notice there's an uptick in passing. And I've seen this before, so I just added this year's or 2 years of data. I've showed you this before,
yes.
this trend of having more. And so you can see it here, Dennis. It's rookies are 35% of their output is passing, peaking year 2, 3%, and then 39, 38, 39. Notice it's 8 is 41. So we were declining a little bit. And then look at the survivors at year 11. And if they're still playing, i.e., Peterson, 43%. I bet if you looked at his fantasy points, I bet you he'd be in the 40% of his show was coming from passing. I mean, I
And,
don't know, but
and
I would predict
Austin
that.
Austin Eckler is another one that
Yeah.
that comes
But you
into mind.
see
Yeah.
that they're not, there's building, staying, and then whoever's left, you get, you hit this 40 plus percent of their show coming from passing. And that's because, so PPR is a rewarding older running
Yes.
backs that can catch.
Yes.
People complain about, PPR. I argue that's where it's helping. And so people are probably not appreciating that. I think this data, and I don't know if I'm going to show this or not. I mean, if the 2 or 3 that listen to it, Dennis, thank you. Here's your treat. If you're a dynasty player,
Holy
that
crap.
would be if I'm looking at an older running back cheap, I would want to see evidence that they can catch passes and hit that 40% close
Well,
to.
here's an interesting stat. So 2018, so we're talking season 8 or 9 for Peterson.
Yep.
He had 208 yards gained out of the backfield. That's and to put that in perspective, he only had 1,000 yards on the ground. So he had another 20% of his production, and I'm not even counting the PPR points. Okay, I'm just
Yeah.
talking the yards.
Mm-hmm.
He had 20% of his yards.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's incredible. So this data is very, very intriguing. This might be a way because I'm almost going to guarantee this. You're probably catching some really cheap
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
RBs every
Yeah.
year. And no, these are not the guys. And oh God, there was so much victory lapping in a negative direction about players this past week. So and
Yeah.
so was a lousy pick. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
So here's the thing: if this was your RB1 that you were relying on because you waited until the 8th round to pick a running back,
Right.
then you're not going to do well. But during bye weeks, especially, but bye weeks and injuries as they add up, if you can get 8 points out of a flex, some weeks that can be the difference between a winning and a losing
I
week.
agree. I agree.
because your top guys are going to still get their 15 to 20. They're going to eat. But how many teams do you look at, especially when there's head-to-head matchups, where they had their top guys do great, and the last two flex positions were like 1 and 3. It's just, if you get it, we were talking about it, McNichols and Wilson last week getting 11 each. Yep. And people are like, oh, I want 15 or more out of my. Yeah, so do I. But as an emergency starter, getting 22 points out of your last two starters.
Yeah, that's not bad.
It's a huge deal. I mean, over an FPPC, if you have 150 points for the week, you had a good week. Yeah. Like 150, if you can score 150 every week,
right,
you're going to make the playoffs, and you're probably going to be in the top 2 or 3 in your league. If you get 22 points out of your bottom 2 flex,
yep,
you're well on your way to that 150 mark without having to do much the rest of the way. If you're, you taught me so well in this format, streaming defenses. If you hit the streaming defense, that's a plus 15.
If you can get 10 points or better a week, you're doing damn good. We've had some really good weeks.
You can get a 10 to 15 point bonus from playing the right defense.
Yep.
Versus playing the wrong defense, you can sometimes cost yourself a couple points in the negative.
Yeah.
So it can be a net win of 10 to 15 points easily.
Well, imagine if you figure over 10 games, you've gained 50 points. As you know, these leagues are so competitive. 50 can move you out of the playoffs into the playoffs.
Yes.
And that's all we're striving to do is, make that. And that's just money in the pocket if you can do that. And if people ignore that and ignore kickers, I think they're putting themselves in a bind, and I mean, your main players better be doing really good. You're going to need Jonathan Taylor all the time to give you 3 to keep you in then.
Yeah, I went in one of my FPPC leagues going into this week. I was 62 points out of 6th place.
Yep.
I scored 199.6 this
That
week.
already got you at least half, if not close.
I am now 18 to the good. So that was an 80-point turnaround
swing
in one stinking week.
Yep.
You can have those. And here's the thing. Having that almost 200-point week in FPPC, when about, like I said, 150, 160, you're in contention for the win. You're definitely top 3 if you're 150.
Oh yeah.
So, when you score 200, but it's by Mageddon week, where the lowest teams were in the 80s and 90s this week. If you can avoid one of those bad weeks, and my lowest score this week in FPPC was like 125.
That's a great.
That was my worst league. Okay.
Right.
And I had like 7 leagues where I was over 165 this week on Mageddon. You can do that on Mageddon week. You're making up a hell of a lot of ground on everybody. And that's the big key but you just got to be consistent. And part of being consistent is finding those emergency starters. And if we know this data, that the older wide receivers can be cash money due to receptions, and we're playing full point PPR.
Yeah.
That that is such an advantage to know that data. And again, Professor, it's so often you hear people, oh, it's all luck. This is all luck, 80% luck. No, it's not. There's ways to figure this out. This is like when the 35-1 shot hits the board at the racetrack and everybody's, oh, I can't believe it. And you're sitting there grinning ear to ear because you had him in every combination of your exotics because you did some handicapping. He shouldn't have been. There was a horse over the weekend in the Breeders' Crown, the harness racing, sort of their version of things. And people were like, oh, that was such a surprise. And one of the commentators actually said it. He said, that's the best 33-1 shot you are ever going to get. And here's why. His last race was, and he was saying that before the race, Professor. Right. And this 33-1 shot won the daggone race against all these great stakers races. He's like, there's not a bad horse in this field. Like, this is a wide open field. I'm taking the 33-1 shot here because there's a reason that this horse should be running up front, and here's why. And that's the thing is in fantasy football, there's usually a reason that things happen. These data studies are really unlocking some advantages to be played. Yeah. But look how many of the things become a saying and nobody ever checks them out. Because if they did, they wouldn't be.
It's been bugging me since our friend Joe said that.
Third year breakout.
Yeah,
and these are smart people.
Yeah.
And when you hear smart people saying something, and again, going back to Adrian Peterson. So Peterson 113, 118, years 1 and 2. A 150 year 3, and people say, oh, that was a third year breakout. No, it was just a third year really great season. His first 2 seasons were breakouts, in my opinion. Right. And he just backed them up after that. Yeah. But this third year breakout thing is not real. And data has showed us that.
For the average, I mean, again, Dennis, there's always exceptions, as you know, in a population. So,
but I think
people need to understand, the probabilities, the box and whiskers,
yes.
And that's what's hard is everybody wants clarity. They want it, Dennis. They want the fire. They don't want to chop the wood. They don't want to learn how to think about probability, floor, ceiling. They don't want to learn how to predict and understand the failings of predictions by anybody. And coming from a weather background, that. I mean that your professors had to. They had to know that. There's just so much chaos, and in football, same thing. And these research questions, I think. The only reason I did the passing, I just wanted to catch up and maybe doing a poster for the expo. I hadn't decided. Depends on how many posters we get. That people want to do. I don't know. Maybe just you and I again. I don't know, but we'll have fun doing it.
Well, here's an interesting thing that I've learned starting my studies, my career MVP studies. So since the 2020 season, so from 2020 till now, players that have been active 10 or more games. That's a population of 282 wide receivers.
Yeah.
That's a lot of players, right?
That's a lot of players to figure
You know,
out.
you know how many rookies have had a better 80 or better for their rookie season? Out of the 282, 26.
I would have guessed 18.
Yeah,
That would have
that's
been,
and,
a guess.
yeah, and I think that would have been a solid guess. I would have probably said, you know, probably like 30. I would have guessed, oh, maybe close to 10% of
Yeah.
rookies will have that. No, 26. 26 out
Nice.
of 282, and that's hitting 80. What I'm interested in seeing, and I'm not done with the study completely, but I will be here by the time we talk again on Saturday.
Mhm.
I'm interested to see how many out of that group of 282 has never had an 80-point season.
Yeah.
Because for me, 80-point in the MVP, that's a player that I can count on every week.
Right.
That's 20 running backs a year and 22 wide receivers. If my starters all come from that group, I've had a damn good year.
Yep.
So I want to see how rare that is to hit that number, and see who hits that number the most. The crazy thing is, I I would guess out of the 282,
Hmm.
they would probably got about 80 that have made that number.
Hmm.
That's scary to show you how tough this game of football is.
Hmm.
We think of all of these great players, the Jamar Chases and the T. Higgins. I mean, there you got two great guys on the same team,
Yep.
two great wide receivers. But boy, there is a lot of very average to below average when it comes to fantasy football. Now, anybody who makes a doggone roster in the NFL is a hell of an athlete and that's a hell of a
Right.
career just to make a roster and
Right.
be active for 10 games. That's a big ass deal. But to then take advantage of that opportunity and turn yourself into a great ball player, it doesn't happen very often. And
Right.
these careers, as you're seeing with this data,
Hmm.
these careers are short. Like,
Hmm.
they aren't kidding when they say NFL stands for not for long.
Yep.
And even seeing guys, they like Adrian Peterson, if you would have said, okay, he had, 15-year career, whatever it was. When was the last time he had an over 80 MVP? I would have said, well,
Hmm.
God, it was probably like the year before he left the game. And the answer is no, it was year 6. But he still was there. And looking at your data and see that fall off after year 6 with the guys that, especially with the guys that don't contribute from the passing game.
Hmm.
James Cook is a guy I'm not drafting in a few years because
Hmm.
he has no appeal in the passing game right now.
Hmm.
If that doesn't develop, he's gone. He's not going to be a force after his 5th or 6th year in the league. That's what that data tells me, is that, and again, that lone exception might stand out. He might be great for 15 years. God knows. Who knows how long you'll last? But I'm betting against those slim odds. I want guys that, because you're going to be overpaying for him at that point.
Yeah, that's the thing. You will.
I want the bargains, and being able to understand this data better. I think we're going to have a lot better bargain hunting in the future. But I'm always intrigued, Professor, when your data backs up things that I've been doing that work, because my methodology happened because I kept notes and I did more of the good things and less of the bad things.
Yeah.
But the data is saying that was the right way to do it. And that intrigues me because it just shows that the tendencies, instead of falling for recency bias, I'm watching the data close enough that I'm understanding some of these concepts, even if I haven't done the data research yet. And your data research is backing up that a lot of what we have done with the better than zero
Mm-hmm.
makes sense. It's like these early in their career guys are like they can develop into anything. But once they put up 2 bad years,
Yeah.
whew, why are you betting on the 3rd year suddenly being better than what we've seen? I'm going to let somebody else have that player, and I'm going to take my chances with the newcomers.
And I could get deeper with the data at at the player level and fish that out. I just hadn't done it. I like to look at the big picture. So,
Well, I think the big picture is the way to go because if you look at individual players, that's where your biases come in.
well, I think you get too deep in the weeds
Yes.
and I think biases happen.
Yeah, it's just like the people that I've seen who build these models, they call them, to predict rookie performances. And they'll look back only the last 3 or 4 years. And it's like they're constantly trying to find the next Puka Nakua.
Mhm.
And he may never, like those combinations of things that you saw in Puka will probably never come around again. You could bet on them the next 15 times and you'll have 14 that are out of the money.
Yeah.
Unless there's a player with Puka like background that now gets the identical opportunity
Mhm.
to succeed. I'm so convinced, Professor, that our idea of chasing opportunity versus trying to define talent is why we've been so successful with these younger players in recent years. And sometimes you're going to fall off. Like, Bill has great opportunity right now.
Yeah.
He can't sustain the volume because
Nope.
we talk about a two-way split backfield like Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet. Imagine if Halani was also getting touches for Seattle.
Yeah.
That would get even messier. That's what's happening in Washington right now. And there's no way to foresee that was going to happen. It would make sense to have a two-way split. A three-way split isn't going to do anybody any good. And as we've seen from some of this data in the past, some of these running backs, they have to be out there 10 to 15 times before they really have an impact. If they're only getting 5 or 6 or 8 touches a game, they're not going to have an impact on the game. Just like a wide receiver that's only getting 1 to 3 targets.
Right.
Once you get over 7 targets, then you've taken over the game. And that's where I think this data research is going to pay off because it's going to find these guys that are exceptional. And those are the guys we want to be investing in. And we want to leave the ordinary alone. But I will continue to take 5 or 6 shots at opportunity every year. You only have to hit 1 or 2 of them to have great fantasy football success.
I agree.
All right, Professor. Are
Yep.
we
It's time.
ready to
Yeah. Yeah.
crank this show up? All right, here we go. Ramondre Stevenson now added to the
Yeah,
questionable list. I think
yeah.
it might be quicker for us to say who is healthy
Who's
this
healthy?
week.
Yeah.
Might be like 3 players. All right, here we go. How you doing, everybody? This is Dennis Michelson. Welcome to the science of fantasy football. Why the science of fantasy football? Well, you get a meteorologist and a biologist together. They're going to use the scientific method. That simply means we're going to let the statistics answer the questions for us instead of having an answer and going to cherry pick the stats that might fit our preconceived notion. And joining me, as he does every week, and multiple times, John, we're visiting so often. My wife is starting to wonder about us.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're he is the
Okay.
fantasy professor.
Okay.
He's a real professor. It's John
Uh,
Bush. And John,
well,
it's getting to that time of the year where we are having to get the old teams in order, getting ready for the playoffs.
yeah, you're trying to make that push, thinking about who might be some in player, what is it, in times, in player, in playoffs. Who's going to be there for you? Who's going to help you girdle your opponents, right? Who's going to moss them? And that can be tricky here. There's still some things shifting around. We've had a lot of quarterbacks moving injury and stuff this year. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's every year. Uh, I have to go back and look, but just seems like a lot of moving pieces. And I know in New Orleans, Mr. Mr. Rattler, he's maybe rattled his last rattler there, and we're going to another youngin. And I just, then they're talking about trading some of these people away. I don't know what they're doing down there in New Orleans, Dennis. It hurts me. But anyway, there's a lot of moving pieces this week, and we have 4 teams on bye. So that's still not bad as last week, but still that can be tricky as well.
And some really good players on bye as well, with the Buccaneers and Eagles especially being out. Jets and Browns being out. You weren't shopping as much from the Browns as you were from the Buccaneers and the Eagles, but
Hmm.
that's 4 sets of quarterbacks. That's,
Hmm.
4 sets of starting running backs and 8 wide receivers and 4 tight ends that are out of play. Or with the Browns, they've got 2 tight ends that you've been playing, either Fannin or Njoku. So that's a lot of talent to the sidelines at a time when we're also in the doldrums of the NFL with all these injuries. So it's getting tough. McLaurin, was declared out already. Stevenson to the questionable list. Maybe that means Travion Henderson will get a shot finally to lead that offense. It's going to be interesting to see. This is just Wednesday when we're recording this. By Friday and Saturday, that questionable list will really literally be littered with a lot of players. But before we get into some of the specifics of what's going on this week, I got a somewhat gripe of the week, but it's more of a statistics lesson than a true gripe. I saw some people that were posting things like, oh, this guy gets 7 points per target, and he's only had 3 targets a game. But imagine if he got 8 targets a game, how much his fantasy points would increase. And I was like, no, please don't do this again. Because it's just the same. Oh, this running back, got 1 carry and he got a touchdown. Does that mean if he gets 20 carries in the game next week, he's going to get 20 touchdowns? Of course not. It's the same with targets as it is with touchdowns, folks. Targets are earned, and there's usually a reason that a particular wide receiver is only getting 2 or 3 targets a week, even if he's producing when he gets those targets. There's a reason. The rest of the time, he's running 35 routes a game. He's only getting open 2 or 3 times. So, because a quarterback is going to throw to the guy who's open. Like, if you get an open receiver in the NFL, you're going to target that guy. So, these short sample projections where a guy does something over a small number of targets or carries or touches, and then you expand that and say, oh, if this running back who's only getting 8 chances a week suddenly gets 25 touches, look at how much production. No, stop doing that. These short sample projections don't mean diddly. And yes, I will get involved in doing some short sample projections as well, because sometimes that's all you have as a small data source. This week or this year, for instance, Dak Prescott has an MVP index of 160 at home, 40 on the road. But we're only talking a few games. In the past, he hasn't been that home away biased. Will it continue this year? I don't know. But when I see that, even though it's a short sample, what it should do is get you to think. It doesn't get you to act, but it gets you to think. Is there a different circumstance? Did he play 2 tough defenses at home and now he gets on the road, and now he gets an easy defense? There's always so much that needs to go in, but we just want to grab one thing and run. And when you do that with a short sample to fuel a projection, you're asking for trouble.
There's this constant battle of sample size and significance in stats, Dennis, and we in fantasy football have to be aware of that. And when you combine multiple years, it's helps on sample size, but then the variation, new coaches, new situations you start pouring that in to the mix. All of a sudden, it's too much salt or too much cayenne in your gumbo, and that can ruin it. So, it's not an easy situation. And if you are not, if you haven't dealt with stats long enough in your life, I would be extra cautious. I would have a sign. I do not really understand stats. I've just, you should just, in your mirror, just put that up for fantasy football stats. I really don't understand it. Caution. And that's what you should think about, and versus some of the click that's going on, because they're not there to, are they really there to help you win or to get you to look, go to clicks and buy bubble gum or whatever they're selling on their site, their merchandise, funny hats and, funny shoes and stuff, whatever, Dennis. What are they doing? Anyway, that's the scariest thing is making conclusions, uh, beyond the sample. And we used to do, I remember my stats, and he would have data and he would show it linear. And he would say, okay, imagine there was a sample and it was outside the previous data set. Well, do you think that's going to continue? And, yeah, sure. Look at he says, and then he would draw it differently and show like it was more of a kind of an anthill looking pattern. In other words, with too much, it crashes in biology. sometimes, well, you got to have rainfall. Yeah, but sometimes with certain animals, too much is bad and the
Yeah.
population crashes. Not enough is bad, right? You're dry, you're parched, or too much is bad. So you have to understand the range of your data sets as well. And that's something we don't do a lot, we don't think about. Because remember, people are trying to make quick decisions because they don't really want to cut the firewood, Dennis. They just want it quick, quick. Better yet, just pay somebody to tell you, and then you got somebody to get mad at, right? You hear them on the radio, and they're complaining to about the players, about the host, and it's your damn fault that I did this. Well, no, you did it. It's your fault. You need to suck it up a little bit. And I don't hear a lot of that. I rarely have heard anybody call in the complaint line. They'll play that on the serious fantasy. They'll have people, do song and dance and little imitations. And verily nobody says, I am a big dumbass and I am sad. And no, it's who am I blaming this week? I mean, they're funny and entertaining, but that's who they should blame.
Yeah. And here's the thing. There's a range of outcomes possible for every player every week.
Yeah.
And there's a very well defined output. If I'm looking at a player who's got a long track record, and I look at an Amon-Ra St. Brown for this week, for instance, I'm probably going to start his floor fairly high because I know over the past few seasons, past 2 seasons plus, he's only had like 4 games where he finished with less than 10 points. So am I going to use 3 as his starting range? No. I might put his starting range at 10. And on the upside, I know he scored over 20 quite quite frequently, right? He's
Right.
got 4 of those games in 7 starts this year. So I'm going to put his upside value probably 22, 24. If I do that reasoning on every player, I'm going to hit that range a pretty high percentage of the time. And that's what I don't think people realize. Yes, you could have a weird game where he goes out after 1 snap, but that's the unicorn game. You're not forecasting the worst case. You're forecasting the most likely range of outcomes.
Right.
And I always like to think minus touchdowns. So when you see me predict a player or say what I think of a player on Twitter, if I get asked, and I'll say, boy, he looks like a 6 to 12 point game without touchdowns.
Right.
That's kind of the way you have to think for your floor. What's this player's floor? How bad could it be? And it's different. And I see somebody, well, the range of outcomes is 0 to 60 points,
Yeah.
or 70 points. Nobody's ever scored 70, so that's it. Well, yeah, you do that, and somebody will score 6 touchdowns and really blow your point total away. But that's not like Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jamison Williams have a different range of outcomes. They do. They've established that. And until you realize that, then you're just guessing with your starting lineup.
Like I said, in week 9, I think people have been jaded by things and only kind of remember the last week and the week before and that one
Yeah.
exceptional thing, and they're starting to lose they're starting to lose the script, Dennis, at this point. If they're not, just leading, they're starting to lose the script. And I don't know how to bring them back. That's why I like our points only to get to the playoffs. That removes a lot of that weird.
Yes.
I
Yes.
hate I hated in some other sites to where I would be the top point scorer, but I have points against top as well. So I'm in, whatever place, and it would make me angry. And I don't have time to be angry anymore. I'm playing too many damn leagues to be angry. Okay. So that's something to consider is if it's driving you nuts, is it really worth if it's not fun? I would change platforms, Dennis. I'd go find some other dynasty or guillotine. I'd do something else. If it's not working, why do you keep doing it every year?
Yeah, and I here's the thing, Professor. I like to play a lot of different formats because the
More than
different
me, folks. More than
yes,
me.
yes.
Way
And
more than me.
but there's a reason that I do that. One is to challenge myself. Okay, so I'm in a league this year where they said, well, there's, 11 players on offense, 11 players on defense. We're going to have 11 starters, from the offense in your lineup and 11 IDP guys. I've never played in a league like that. I'm getting my butt kicked pretty good, but it's a learning process, and I'm starting to pick up some things, and I'm actually on a nice little winning streak now. Over the last 5 weeks, I've won 3 times, so I'm starting to pick up on how many of each you need to have on your roster. I need some more backups for my IDP guys than I originally thought early in the season. So I've made the
Right.
adjustment. But the different strategies, the different thought patterns that you have to go through in dynasty versus redraft, when there's a player that comes on to the scene as a possible good player in redraft, I've already got him in dynasty leagues. So I've already researched him. I already know, you know, tight end for the Titans. Not a guy that I'd play in redraft this year. Not a guy I'd even put in my starting lineup in a dynasty league, but a guy I'm picking up in a lot of dynasty leagues as I get guys hurt. Gunnar Helm is a guy that I'm really intrigued about for next year. He'll be a second-year tight end. He'll probably move Okonkwo out of that role as the lead tight end. And I'm trusting that the Titans will actually understand that they've got to rebuild their offensive line. And if they do that, you got Cam Ward, you got whoever they draft at running back, because it's not going to be Pollard or Spears going forward in a few years when this team gets